Good morning and a happy Wednesday. The great news is the week is almost over. Even better, we have entertainment news for you today. I'm Roth, Cornet, and you know who we have with me? Ed Greer.
Hey, guys.
You're one of my favorites. You're one of my 3 favorite regular people that we have on the show.
Well, don't name the other 2.
Yeah,
then we'll have to do a death match.
Leave them guessing.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe we'll make you fight for it.
Ooh.
Do the Dark Knight tryouts thing.
Yeah. You get the honor of my favor. Dan Murrell always has my favor.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We'll see after today.
Uh-oh.
You never know.
What's happening today that I don't know
I'm
about?
just saying, you never know what happens. I don't want to take anything for granted.
Today's the day we kill you, finally. Joe Starr is here.
How'd you know our plan?
Well, you're kind of giving it away. You're dropping a lot.
I'm so bad at murder.
You guys are not good at doing the murder, but you know who's good at doing the hints and the teases is Mr. Simon Pegg, who we've talked about a little bit recently. He's been out there talking about the things. He was on Josh Horowitz's Happy, Sad, Confused podcast. How are we feeling today, Josh? I don't know. Happy, sad, and confused, all of it. And he talked a little bit about Rey's parents in Star Wars, and this is not going to come as a big surprise to many of us, but he said that the last film undid JJ. Oh, what? Here's what he said. Well, I know that JJ kind of had intended, or at least what was sort of being chucked around. I think that's kind of been undone slightly by The Last Jedi. There was some talk about, a kind of relevant lineage, if you will, Skywalker. But I honestly don't know. I love when people set up a thing that they clearly do know, and then they're like, I don't know, don't ask me. But it was definitely, she was a Skywalker. I mean, clearly she was a whole solo Skywalker, some kind of business. I think that's what JJ was clearly intending. But Nostradamus Joe had some other thoughts back in 2016. What was that, Joe?
Joe Stradamus agreed with Rian Johnson that Rey should not have famous parents. That she should be her own cool little character. There's think pieces on the internet. There's proof.
There were a lot at the time, and the big conversation was who are Rey's parents, who is Snoke for the couple of years. And I think that we've talked about this a lot. That basically that film represents, I think, that moment in the film where the lightsaber splitting represents the fan base in a lot of ways. About the last, that is the moment that captures what the film did. Mm-hmm. And half of the fan base really wanted her to be a nobody from nowhere, and
a Skedobi Bridger.
Because I don't think it's just undoing. I don't think it's just undoing JJ's film. I don't think it's just undoing The Force Awakens. It's addressing the idea of midichlorians in a way, because there was this idea that the Force was for everyone, right, in the original 3 films, and that some people had greater or lesser access and can be trained and things like that. And there was some idea of a genetic link through the Skywalkers, but everyone had access to the Force. And then it became just Space Jesus does, really, and his kids. What do you think?
Day 110.
Of Dan's captivity in the Star Wars conversation.
I've forgotten what sunlight looks like and what food looks like.
I want to see Dan in the AT-AT like Rey, just ticking numbers.
Ticking numbers on the wall.
Eating your bread, your
your
powder bread.
I guess we're just gonna roll right into Solo on this one.
Dan,
which will get us
what do you think?
to
Dan,
episode 9.
That take is worth 4 half portions.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll never know.
I think we will in the next movie
we have
when JJ
the Star
flips it around
Wars
again.
that we have. When are we gonna? When's the 12th step done? When is it behind us?
I have opinions and I don't care about them anymore.
When do we get to the stage of acceptance?
Yes, when do we accept what's happened?
You know what?
Would someone please cut together a montage of Dan talking about Star Wars to Hurt by Johnny Cash?
Dude, nice black and white push-ins. Yeah. You know what I mean? Do that. That whole aesthetic.
I spoke my takes today.
We're gonna know because that whole mirror thing, that whole mirror image of it's you. It doesn't matter who your parents are. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you came from, what you did. The only now is now, and the only you is you. Is gonna totally be undone by JJ. No.
I definitely hope not, because I think one thing that this movie is did and that made a lot of people mad was, like you said, destroy the whole family lineage, destroy this whole concept that like the Force was for 5 people to have adventures with. It was a unifying force for everybody, and no matter how much education in the Force you had, as it were, or how many resources in the Force
Luke
you
had
had,
almost
as it
no
were.
education.
Exactly.
He had a
But of
GED.
course, it'd be like if Prince Harry learned he was Prince Harry like at 20 and
Yeah.
then went off to be with his space daddy or whatever. You know what I mean? So like, all I'm
That's how
saying is,
England works too.
yeah. And I personally want Rey to be Greedo's adopted daughter, and she's got like this hidden agenda, and she was going to kill Solo herself. She's like, damn it, I was robbed, and that's why she has this psychosexual thing with Kylo Ren, because he robbed her of the revenge that she wanted. I want something weird like that. Let's get nuts. You know what I mean? As long as we're breaking stuff.
Let's break all of it.
I mean,
I'm
because I feel like a lot of the fans are so mad about how that movie went because we didn't get things that I wanted too. I wanted Luke Skywalker running up the leg of AT-ATs and stuff and chopping them up. I wanted him crushing their heads with his hand, like that Kids in the Hall sketch. I crush your head, and then boom, Skywalker blows up. I wanted that stuff, and we didn't get it. But I think we might have gotten something better, depending if JJ takes this direction. Like, okay, I see what you did, kid. It's like when you used to watch a comic book artist do a jam piece. And like one guy starts out with a dope ass street, and then the one guy starts with a big guy, and like I hope this punch connects. I think I'd like to see this as a big jam piece by artists instead of all total fan service the whole time.
We called those Mad Libs, and
Yeah.
they were with words that didn't make sense. But yeah, I think that there is merit to all points of view.
Certain
Luke,
points of view.
is
from a
Simon
certain
Pegg
point of view.
Yes.
Is Simon Pegg like the luckiest just dork of all time?
Yes.
Because he's a huge nerd. But like, because of the success he's had, the nerd part of him also has like this certain status where he just gets to run around with the gods that like he also worships. And so there's just part of me that like when Simon Pegg's able to separate like acting and all the work he's done to sort of get to where he is, where there's a part of him that would have just been like a nerd blogger, but like a nerd blogger who's also like on first name basis with like JJ Abrams and stuff like that.
I mean, he's living the life that. Never mind, I don't want to mention that guy, but there was an infamous Austin journalist, Harry Knowles.
Oh, good. I'm glad we didn't say the name.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he that's the life he wanted to live. I remember going to the Austin Film Festival and watching that person interact with people on the screen. I was like, wow, he wants to be their friend so bad, and it'll
So
never
bad.
ever happen. But Simon Pegg is like, hey, mate, he knows how the Vegemite is made. I know he's not from Australia, but I just had to commit to the whole thing. I had to commit to the whole Australian wrong for a second.
enough. It's okay.
But yeah, he knows how it's made. He knows how the sausage is made, and it's still wondrous for him. I think when I see him, it seems like he's genuinely still enthusiastic about it, even though he knows how the sausage is made.
Well,
and that's kind of incredible.
He can have. I think you're right, and I think he has that sense of joy and not the like slight undercurrent of rage and anger, because he is leading the life that a lot of the people that are film blogging and things like that want to lead. That's what they want to do.
It's true.
Oh,
Here comes
addendum.
Billy Business.
Oh.
Just
Just
an
because
addendum.
I listened to the rest of the podcast, and sadly, that is opposite of how he felt. When
Really?
he saw Force Awakens, he was saying, like, why do I feel kind of let down and depressed by this? And he realized he didn't like being a part of Star Wars, like making it. He liked being a fan because he's like, I knew all the surprises. It was kind of a bummer. I kind of liked being on the outside.
Yeah, you
looking
know
in.
what? Bullshit. That's like people.
You know what?
Yeah.
No, I call
Yeah.
bullshit on that, because that is like somebody with like, that is like a billionaire being like, hey man, it's not all about money. Like it is for you, like a lot of us are outside of the window. Like, please, sir, can I have some more? Like I call bullshit on that.
Well, I
I call
mean-
bullshit.
Well, I could relate in only this way. I don't think I've been surprised by anything that's happened in this whole thing. My ire didn't get up in Last Jedi. I'm just kind of going along with the story, just taking it all in. Nothing of this is surprising to me. So it's like, if I knew what was going to happen, yeah, that would take a layer off of it. Spoilers, you know what I mean? But I don't know, man. I think he's probably searching for something super interesting to say.
Whatever the end result is, I would rather be making Star Wars or a part of making Star Wars than talking about it right now. And all of you would too, and all of you would too. Come on, I'm not saying I could, I'm saying I would rather.
I want to swing a lightsaber around.
Did you guys
I would
know
fully be like,
that
stop
this week
making the sound.
is the 50th anniversary of 2001: A Space Odyssey coming out?
Oh, that's
No.
exciting.
And Planet of the Apes.
Oh, wow.
Arthur C. Clarke files everywhere.
That's
That's all that
exciting.
I have. I'm out of everything else. That little factoid is all that I have left.
Should we have
space
done
related.
a 2001 Honest trailer?
No.
Yeah, you're right.
No,
Yeah,
I
you're
can't.
right.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
You're right.
Is it? That's
I
a
shan't.
That's
I
a,
shan't.
cannot do it. That's a trick. Have you guys seen it on the big screen?
No, I want to go to the Chris Nolan 70 millimeter.
I
Yeah.
did. I did the
Thing.
70 millimeter thing, and I will say that so much of that film, I've seen it a ton because we watched it a lot when I was young. That was just like one of our staple movies, one of the 3 movies that defines my personality. Other ones are Star Wars and The Blues Brothers, but
Makes sense.
the screensaver montage, it does feel a little dated. It really does. Like there's so much of that movie that's amazing and stands up. I mean, look, it inspired our wall over here. That's a Hal riff. But that
Yeah.
that bit,
Oh, different Hal. Hey, different Hal.
Open
It
the
would
bay
be-
doors
it
to give you
would
those
be-
sick memes.
it would be such an inside
Thank
joke.
memes.
David, our social media manager, this is too inside, but do Hal as Hal.
Hal,
Like
right?
you've done
That's
Hal
Hal.
as Alexa,
Yeah.
and Hal is like your iPhone, and Hal is like whatever, your fucking vacuum by this point.
Yeah.
Do Hal as Hal.
Oh,
Just one thing.
yes. The Last Jedi is my monolith. I just look at it and it's sitting there going.
Our focus
And
on the
I-
pain.
Well, the good news is I have other news for us. Would you like
Yay.
some other news?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let's do other news, and then we can talk about 2001: A Space Odyssey and your favorite moments from that film. James Gunn wrote some of the dialogue for Infinity War for the Guardians. Dave Bautista was talking about this via a AMA at Q&A at Awesome Con, which is, again, this weird con that keeps popping up recently. I think that's cool, and he's certainly very attached to the characters, but does it seem interesting, like, eventually, are other people going to be able to write for the Guardians?
I think to go off what Ed said with the jam piece, I think it's important that he wrote lines of dialogue for the Guardians because there's a lot of quippy people in Marvel right now, and I think it's important to differentiate how or why they're quippy. Like Stark is quippy because he's Tony Stark and he's this rich, slick talking asshole. Star-Lord is quippy because he's a 10-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And I think, you got to make sure that someone comes in and works with the characters that they know well and let them differentiate a little bit. This is, a crossover of some very, very different properties. And I think homogenizing them outright with a single writer would not necessarily would have been bad, but I think this is a stronger choice to really, truly make this, on some levels, a creative crossover.
I definitely agree with that, and you can see it in certain animated things that happen where it's just like this team of people who have a vague conception of what Captain America is end up animating him, and he comes off like a bully or like an old stodgy loser who doesn't have any cool ideas, or and it's just like, wow, that's not quite Captain America. You got like 45% of the worst parts of him and threw him into some project. So I think with characters even more weird and complex than that, like the ones in Guardians, and I think it is good to just, hey man, let that happen for a while. And I'd rather that than a homogenous house style where Star-Lord sounds like T'Challa, sounds like Bucky, sounds like, I'd rather that. I'd rather this complication than anything else.
Because I was actually wondering about this when I saw the trailer, and you have the scene where they're going over the plan, and he's like, or we do a plan that I come up with so that it's not a bad plan, and the Earth Marvel characters are just like, what? Like, there's no quips back. It's just literally like, I don't know how we fit yet. And I think having someone else literally writing their lines sort of really adds to that sort of, we're trying to jam a square peg in a round hole right now with these properties.
Yeah, collaboration's always good. That's what I felt was one of the issues that I had with Justice League, was that in the process of adding what was the hybrid of the original movie and then the Joss Whedon voice, I thought a lot of the characters didn't have the same characterization as they had in the previous movies. Batman in particular, I felt really didn't track with the Batman. There's another one because there's another guy writing. So I think you do have to. It's smart to bring in, especially because James Gunn is like he's always like tweeting about they show him all the movies early. He gives them creative notes.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's a good idea because they are his babies in a sense, and why wouldn't you want somebody who has a stake in it?
Yeah.
And James Gunn is a big part of why Marvel is singing right now. Obviously, what we've seen, the success of Black Panther, the success of Civil War, and all these things. The Russo brothers and Feige, and I think James Gunn, kind of in that order, are because like you've seen that his influence on Thor Ragnarok, for better or worse. You know what I mean? In some people's opinion.
Better or worse? I'm asking your opinion.
I think better because I think that Thor 3 is the best Thor. So yeah, I'd say better.
All right. Everybody think about your favorite moment from 2001, A Space Odyssey. And is Planet of the Apes one of the best movie endings of all time? They did it. Guillermo del Toro is in a deal with Fox Searchlight. This is exciting news for those who love horror and sci-fi and genre projects. This is after the success, obviously, of The Shape of Water. The deal includes action films that del Toro will write, produce, and sometimes direct. It has a new film label, is also part of the deal. He can percolate on genre projects to produce, which is really exciting because he's not going to get a ton of money, if we're honest, from
Not
Fox
from Fox
Searchlight.
Searchlight,
Like they just don't, he's not going to be making pack rims out of this, but he might be making really interesting smaller films. And I think as we've seen over the last year or two, I just saw A Quiet Place last night, and Dan and I will have a review later today for that. But God, that is a good film. And it doesn't actually necessarily take a ton of money to make a great genre film.
Yeah.
It's got awesome creature design, everything top to bottom. This movie is, and it's the perfect runtime.
And what I think is very important, just to build on that point, I think it's very important that so-called real movies, we were talking about the death of film last time I was on here, the death of the theater experience. Things like that.
It's so morbid.
Right. Well, things like that are happening because most of the smaller budgeted horror genre pieces end up on Netflix or end up shat out into any number of streaming services. So what I would say is it's very important that something like this hit the screen to where you can get that together, tingler, old 1950s, scariness, with other people. You and other people getting scared, bringing that back to like theaters because a lot of people like Paranormal Activity is probably the last phenomenon we're all in the theater watching something movie. I'd love to see this blow up like that, maybe.
Well, Get Out had the highest return on investment last year. It was a massive return on investment for that film, and I feel like that was another horror film that people.
Well, Blumhouse's whole oeuvre,
Yeah.
so Blumhouse is doing it, but I'd love for Blumhouse not to be
The only
Blumhouse.
sole-
They're the only, yeah.
Well, Del Toro has a really cool track record of picking projects he wants to produce and like voices he sort of wants to build up too. So I think, especially after the Best Picture win, the more important you can make the name Guillermo del Toro, like the more important those projects will feel and look. If he can be the Oprah's book club of like horror movies, that's pretty cool.
If it's slightly more effective than Rolling Thunder films, you know what I mean. If it's slightly more effective than that, then we'll be in the house.
Yeah, I also hope though that they kind of use this as the affiliation with Fox Searchlight, that if he does come up with a Pacific Rim type idea, that he's not limited by because Fox Searchlight puts out some great material, but they're not the most high budget pieces.
No.
So I hope that he is still able to use the studio as an arm of an available resource if he should come up with a
I would
huge
love,
idea.
I would love like a Merchant Ivory looking Pacific Rim movie about like a clockwork monster from back in the days or something weird like that.
I would love that too, but yeah, that would
That
have
aesthetic,
to have
with a
a
giant budget.
that would have to have a budget of $5 million to ever get made, like tops. And when I get that million,
I will producing
contribute it. Stranger Things. Speaking of horror, a couple of things here on Stranger Things actually in the news. Coming to Halloween Horror Nights here in Los Angeles, which is exciting, and we have a video from that as well. But also, Dan, as Dan reminded us today, there's a lawsuit happening over Stranger Things at the same time. So that's kind of interesting. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, basically, there's a filmmaker named Charlie Kessler who is claiming that he did a short back in 2011, I believe, called Montauk. And then he wrote that into a feature script called The Montauk Project. It was based on a book, and it's basically about this town, Montauk, and the kind of strange happenings in the town and the disappearance of a young boy, and things that are similar themes to what happened in Stranger Things. Basically, he's claiming he pitched the concept at a party at the Tribeca Film Festival to the Duffer Brothers in 2014, and then they sold the idea in 2015, which when Stranger Things was announced, it was under the name Montauk. It was later, the setting was changed. So basically he's saying, I had this idea, I pitched it to them, then they pitched my idea to Stranger Things, to Netflix, and that became Stranger Things. So of course he wants millions of dollars. The Duffer Brothers, of course, are saying that's ridiculous, it's meritless, it's completely, it's essentially hinges on, can he prove that a conversation occurred at a party 4 years ago?
And can he prove that there's enough of a similarity between the Montauk that he already created,
Montauk that he created and
Stranger Things?
What they pitched, and I'm sure a lot of that is, due diligence and script drafts, and and a lot of times these things get thrown out of court fairly quickly if they are found by a judge to be meritless. But sometimes, for example, with Blurred Lines, that they had to pay millions of dollars to Marvin Gaye's estate, right? Because it was found to be substantially similar to a Marvin Gaye composition. So these things don't always get thrown out. We're in this is literally like this happened yesterday, so track it as it goes. But these things happen all the time.
And as the story talks about, I mean, with the money that this is making and the money that's going on, that it wouldn't mean that they jacked the idea if some money got thrown this guy's way. To shut up, get out of here. We're trying to make this universal money. You're screwing it up, kid. You know what I mean? That wouldn't necessarily mean guilt.
I wonder what they're suing the Netflix or the Duffer Brothers? Both. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, they may just want to settle to make it go away. There was another case in music. I mean, there's been several in terms of borrowing riffs and things, but there's a really famous band, which I will not name, that had, and it's only because I can't remember, but that had was sued by like a far lesser known band and for using a riff. And they were like, we've never even heard of you. We don't know who you are. So that band was able to produce a fan letter from the lead singer. Like, oh, you don't? Really? Because there's this fan letter from 20 years ago when you were like 14. And then they settled out of court and they were like, what?
But Led Zeppelin, never convicted of stealing anything. And if you listen to that stuff, like that seems pretty cut and dry, but they, there's enough in the copyright law, there's enough of a leeway that unless you can prove that somebody did something, because I think the Blurred Lines case, they had to go back to interviews, and the songwriter talked about how much they were listening to Marvin Gaye, so that certainly doesn't help.
As music gets more homogenized, like I think a lot of stuff that Bruno Mars does, I'm not trying to diss him, but it sounds like regular songs from like 1980 something or 70 something, like a regular, that in between song on the radio, not a hit.
With Led Zeppelin, I mean, I agree, it's ridiculous. They owe the Tolkien estate so much money, and it's crazy that just got thrown out. I think with the Stranger Things deal, look, Stranger Things isn't the first like conspiracy theory story about the government doing shady experiments in Middle America. Yeah. This Montauk book was not the first book to cover, this subject matter. I think if we learn anything here, guys, it's don't talk about all your shit at parties.
Nope.
Yeah.
That really is the lesson.
That's the lesson. Don't tell people your idea. Like, if you have an idea and you legitimately think it's a good idea, don't tell anyone that idea.
Just
make it. Copyright it, make it, make sure protect yourself. People do. I mean, that's the truth is, though, people and companies steal ideas.
Oh, sure they
all
do.
The time.
Yeah. The reason that these cases don't get settled in the favor of the claimant most of the time is that in order for these cases to succeed in court, you have to prove intent. And intent is very difficult to prove. Really, like intent has to usually have a paper trail. Right. Intent has to have that is with these copyright claims, like in order to get over just the thing of just like, listen, we're in a similar space, we had similar ideas. There was no, that's a very easy argument to make. You really don't have to, intent is what you have to prove, and intent is incredibly difficult to prove in a court of law.
It gets even tougher in comedy. There's a couple weeks ago on SNL, they did the Tucci Gang.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
UCB guy did that as soon as the song came out. And it's almost line for line the same Stanley Tucci Gang parody, but because intent. You would have to prove somehow that like the SNL writers room like threw that up on a big screen and was like, yeah, just change like 4 words. This is gold.
We're stealing that.
Yeah, then there's no way to do it.
There's no way to do it, and it's also perhaps not even true. Like we see this happen all the time, that similar projects are in development.
Parallel development.
And it's just that there's something called the universal unconscious, and they're like tapped into it, man. Yeah.
I'm gonna sue the universal unconscious for stealing my ideas.
Man. It's the universe's idea. You were just the one tapped in that moment, turned on. Hey, what's your favorite 2001 moment?
Of the year? Or I graduated from high school, which was great.
Great, yeah.
I just dated myself. My favorite 2001 moment. Wow, there's so many. I love the filmmaking feat. I love that shot that Kubrick was able to do of him jogging around the circular thing, and just the way that it was shot. And you forget that this movie's not in space. Like, I keep forgetting that this movie's not in space. I also love, it's horrific. It's one of my favorite horrifying moments ever is when Dave pulls his other astronaut into the escape pod to get away from Hal, and they're talking about how they're going to deactivate it, and then it just cuts to that POV shot of how it's silent but reading their lips, and just like it does. And again, that's a movie you're trusting the audience to know what's happening. It doesn't. There's no point where they're like, oh my god, Hal must have read our lips. But this just like point of view shot with that like white noise sound, and it's just going back and forth, and you can just see that, and you're like, oh no. I love that shot. Again, like that's just allowing something creepy to be creepy and not slapping your audience in the face with it.
Yeah, I largely blame this film for my deep fear of technology.
And giant space babies.
And well, those are my children. I love them. Yeah.
I love any sort of depiction of either a physical threat to you, like a soldier, or like a machine going crazy. I love any depiction of that. I loved The Abyss. Because of that, the depiction of
it is so underrated.
Michael Bihn's like, oh, I'm getting shaky, I'm getting weird, and like a weapon getting shaky and weird around you, woo, in a enclosed space, and then you got to have a trucker beat him up, within some totally unlikely action scene that you have to manufacture to defeat this monster. Oh, I love it, all that stuff. So Hal really got me.
This is the first movie I realized that I think score was important to movies. Obviously, I had noticed that there was music in movies before seeing this, but I think as your critical brain develops, this was the first time I was like, oh, yeah, the music really helps just make some of these scenes, and you started to see like sort of the creative riffing between composer and filmmaker.
All right.
That's a real widescreen thing too.
Yeah, you guys, if you can do the 70 millimeter, I really, really recommend it. It's so well worth it. Again, there are a few moments here and there that are a little bit dated, but on the whole, it is a masterwork. You know what else is a masterwork? Our honest trailer commentaries.
Woo!
Yeah, those are available for you on ScreenJunkies News right now. You should check it out. It's all about Jumanji.
Joe and Spencer. I
Joe
wasn't
and
there.
Spencer.
Yeah, they covered it.
Looking
we
at Dan.
locked Dan out of the room.
Yeah.
And just
pounding on the door like Fred Flintstone.
I have opinions about Jumanji. Yeah, no, it's a fun one. It's our bleakest ending to an honest trailer I think we've ever written.
Oh, I have to go watch it. Oh, the ending
the
of the
trailer, yeah, not the commentary.
No,
yeah.
The ending of the trailer, yes. I love it. It's horrifically bleak. I just love I agree.
So check that out if you haven't seen the honest trailer yet. Do that and then watch the commentary. We also have John Cena promoting blockers on the main channel, decoding some emojis for us. He's so funny.
You can't see him.
He's just so naturally funny and interesting, but then like also willing to talk about what type of proteins are best for you to eat, which is a conversation that we did have. That movie is opening this week. Check that out.
He's going to fight the
We'll
Undertaker
be back
soon.
tomorrow. There is movie fights for you tomorrow. There are so many things to watch and do. Oh my God, I'm going to get started right now. I'm just going to watch all our stuff all day.
Do it.
We'll call that work. Yeah, thanks for joining us. What's your favorite 2001 moment? Was it Dan's high school graduation?